Are you looking for affordable office space in Marion? The Professional Building, located at 685 Delaware Avenue, is the place for you. For more information, call 740-383-6803. Office space is now available. Again, telephone number 740-383-6803. This is Scott Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Scott Spears Now. Tonight, kind of a sad episode. We discuss the events of the Boston Marathon. April 15th, 2013, 2 bombs went off, killing 3 people, injuring over 144 people, amputations. Just a horrible, horrible event. And I have to say, when I first heard about this, I was shocked, but did not understand the magnitude of why this is important and why the Boston Marathon is important. I called one of my dear friends, longtime HBO boxing analyst, Larry Merchant, but also longtime sports analyst. He's covered just about everything, and one of the things he's covered is the Boston Marathon. And in this episode, Larry really kind of fills us in on why the Boston Marathon is so important and why this attack was really something personal. I guess we'll find out in the weeks and months to come what will happen with that. But right now, let's go to Larry Merchant and his thoughts on what happened this tragic Monday. This is Scott Spears, and this is a special edition of Scott Spears Now. On Monday, April 15th, 2013, 2 bombs struck near the finish line at the Boston Marathon at around 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. At least 144 people are being treated. At least 8 of the patients were children. At least 10 people had limbs amputated, and 3 are reported dead, 1 being an 8-year-old child. Horrible, horrible event. Joining us today, though, certainly one of my favorite people to help us sort out this terrible event. A gentleman who covered the Boston Marathon in his long, extensive career, former HBO boxing analyst Larry Merchant. Larry, not a good day yesterday.
Scott, no. I don't remember being so sad about something that I thought of as pure. I covered the 72 Olympics with the killing of the Israeli athletes. I have vivid recollections of it, but even more vivid recollections of the many Boston marathons I covered. It was a human race. And it's just, as Mike Barnacle, the old Boston writer, put it, just a knife in the heart.
Larry, for those of us who have not been to the Boston Marathon, you said it right there. What is it about that race that's so American and ended up being such a blow to the heart?
Well, first, I always saw it as the kind of local and or regional festival of sport that, say, the Kentucky Derby is, or the Indianapolis 500, or the Rose Bowl. It represented something to that whole community, and something that all the rest of us connected to once in a while. And the marathon in Boston goes back more than a century. Things like New York and Los Angeles marathons are just modern, very contemporary spin-offs of that. And the connection to Patriots Day, the Red Sox playing in the morning. I can remember driving out to Hopkinton, where the marathon begins, and there's a big old gymnasium there. Remember driving past Walden Pond, actually. And in the gymnasium were just a riot of humanity. The serious runners, the world-class runners, getting ready to prove themselves again on what was then really the biggest marathon stage outside of the Olympics. Ready to challenge Heartbreak Hill and the elements. And all the rest of the people who just came there as to testify in some way about themselves and about the race. I remember hearing last night, I guess, about the couple that came from Texas to run in the race, and then they were going to get married. It seemed like a variation of the many, many stories I heard about people coming from all over to participate in this. And of course, the community's response and the vibe that went on, that we all get this somehow. It was back in the day that I started to cover it when, was his name John Rogers or Tom Rogers, who won it several times, one of the last of the Americans to win it. There was an old guy named Kelly, I think he might have been a fireman who had won it many years before, who still ran in the race. There was a press bus that followed the leaders. I remember at one point an official jumping off the bus to wrestle a number away from a woman before women were allowed in the race. Huh. The Rosie Ruiz incident, where she apparently took some shortcuts as part of the lore of the Boston Marathon. And it represented to me, both personally and professionally, what I always thought sport should be. Not just watching the elite, but that everybody participating in it. And their stories and the humanity and the humor of the event. I remember that one time there were a bunch of girls from Wellesley College perched somewhere along the way, and they were carrying signs, and a few of them were stretched appealingly on sofas, and they were waiting for Eric Siegel. Now, Eric Siegel was the author of the bestseller Love Story, which later became a very popular movie. He had been a Harvard grad and was a runner, and he was running in the Boston Marathon. And there were just countless individual stories that mattered. And all of it added up to a glorious celebration of fun and games.
Larry, I want to touch on the way this happened yesterday. It was two bombs, obviously not an isolated incident. It was very well thought out, seemed to be. Even though the bombs, as they say, were a little amateurish, it was two bombs detonated within seconds of each other. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not an expert. The first thought, of course, is that it coming on Patriots Day, that it's some kind of a terrorist act against America and the government. But, we've seen domestic crazies do crazy stuff too. So, whoever planned this and hoped that it would deeply resonate with us did it.
The idea of using ball bearings, which I wanted to add to that, it's just a horrible, horrible thing to do. Larry, at this point, do you have any thoughts? Yours would be as much as any of us. Foreign or domestic, do you have any idea?
Not really. I mean, I could play out some theories, but, that doesn't do any good. Whoever did it was successful. Just the fact that we're still here musing about it, trying to figure out what this is all about, suggests that it was well planned.
Larry, is this just life now as people suggest it? Not that this is going to happen every day, but these things are going to happen at big events.
Well, wars are not carried out anymore by masses of troops charging across fields on horses or on foot or out of trenches. It's a different kind of warfare. Other countries, societies have known this kind of terrorism from within and from without more personally than we have. That's why September 11th was so powerful to us because we're not used to it. We've always had oceans on either side of us. So it is something alien to us, but now I suppose it isn't anymore.
Larry, final question on this whole thing, which has just been so terrible, but being that it was the Boston Marathon will go on. We're not obviously going to bring a halt to this, but where, and the news cycle will cycle, where will this rate in history? How personal was this in the September 11th World War II idea of things?
Well, thousands weren't killed, but it's a body blow. I think this will stay with us for a long, long time. The way some events seem to be absorbed into ourselves. It's bigger than you could imagine, because after Newtown, you would think, well, what could be a real disaster? And relative in terms of injuries and deaths, it doesn't measure up to that. But in terms of the symbolic importance, it will go way beyond the test of time.
I think you're exactly right, Larry. While I have you here, I just want to get your thoughts on two quick other things. One just happened moments ago. Pat Summerall dies at age 82. The voice of football. Do you have any recollections or thoughts on Pat Summerall?
Well, I saw Pat Summerall play ball half a century ago. And I had a casual acquaintance with him professionally, and I always thought he was good at what he did and a good guy.
John Madden referred to him as the voice of football, which is kind of nice. Larry, right before I lose you here, and I wanted to make this quick, a lot of people made mirth that maybe you and George weren't on the best of terms. I didn't get to hear the call of what went on. Is that just rumor? Just, friendly disagreements over the years?
Well, yes. I mean, we agreed to disagree on some things, and it would have been unnatural not to. He is a former champion, an athlete. I'm a journalist. We come at things from a different angle of vision. And sometimes those angles of vision were different and collided. And that's what made for good television, because it was real. But George and I, no, we had no personal animus, and and we had a happy reunion in Macau, of all places.
Well, I am glad to hear it. And Larry, as you know, I'm so glad you didn't go into retirement. I know you don't use the R word, and don't use it because you're looking pretty good today. And happy belated birthday, and thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you again, Scott.
Take care, Larry. Bye-bye. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of Scott Spears Now with Larry Merchant, discussing the tragic events of Monday, April the 15th, 2013 at the Boston Marathon. You know, I was thinking a lot of things are associated with the city of Boston over the years. Certainly the Boston Tea Party, the Boston Massacre, and that almost can be synonymous with what happened on Monday, because it certainly was a massacre. We hope everybody is able to recover as well as they can, and the Boston Marathon will go on, and the people who did this will be brought to justice. I hope after watching this episode you have a little clearer picture of why this was so personal and so important. Until next time, hopefully in better circumstances, this is Scott Spears, headed for the dugout.